Hey guys, Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films back again with Doctor Who Classic. Last time on Doctor Who Classic we had Spearhead from Space. What was that one about?
Well, the Doctor regenerated, although nobody used that word.
Yeah.
Came tumbling out of the TARDIS onto the heath, somewhere north of London, we assume. About the same time some meteorites landed, but that turned out to be some kind of energy force that was about to create the Autons. So that was our first appearance of the Autons.
Yes. The Nestines were creating the Autons to conquer the Earth. And Unit was involved with all that. And because the Doctor just happened to be in the vicinity, he ended up getting involved in all of that.
And Lethbridge Stewart didn't initially recognize him, but the Doctor recognized Lethbridge Stewart.
Yes, so...
And at the end, they finally decided that it was probably the Doctor, so they decided to work with him and give him a spot there at Unit.
Yeah, and since the TARDIS doesn't really function anymore, he can't leave, he's kind of stuck there, so he might as well stay with Unit, who has promised to get him a new car. So I actually saw that technically the second Doctor doesn't end at the War Games. Apparently there are a couple of stories set after the War Games with the second Doctor before he actually regenerates, where he works for the... Okay, people say it's the CIA, not America's, like space, like the Time Lord CIA. Yeah, but actually this slightly makes sense because in the Five Doctors, there was that moment where the second Doctor sees Jamie and Zoe, and he says, no, this can't be you, because the Time Lords erased your memories. So it has to be after that. So, for some reason, there's just like 5 or 6 more stories before he actually regenerates into the third Doctor. Which is why everyone wants to sneak another Doctor in there. So, it's potentially been like 1,000 years, and he just doesn't realize it.
That sounds dubious to me.
It does. But, I mean, there's no greater lore expansion than Doctor Who lore expansion. It rivals Star Wars lore expansion. It's ridiculous. So, the problem is, with Star Wars, there was so much lore expansion, and then Disney came in and said, no, we're not going to do any of that. You get the Clone Wars, and then we're going to make our new shows, and that's it. No more of the books and everything. We'll have new books. Doctor Who, nobody's decided what's canon and what's not canon. So even the Doctor Who wiki is like, well, according to, one account, the Doctor did this, this, and this. According to another account, he did this, this, and this. Either way, this is what happens next from one account.
Yeah.
So lore with this show is just all sorts of out of whack. So,
but didn't you say that when Pertwee stumbled out of the TARDIS, he was still wearing
Troughton's outfit?
So there wasn't another Doctor, according to that.
But the theory goes that the hidden Doctor between
Two and a half Doctor.
Yeah, the 2.5 Doctor. The whole thing was that they had to erase the Doctor's memory of being that person. So, by logic, the Time Lords put that Doctor into the second Doctor's outfit so that they regenerated into Pertwee, and the third Doctor is none the wiser.
Yeah. In the words of Ebenezer Scrooge, humbug.
Yeah. So, anyway, we're watching another serial today. This is Doctor Who and the Silurians, which is a weird title. Normally it would just be the Silurians. I don't know why they had to specify that, but I don't know.
I think I read somewhere that it was either the new producer or something, and most of the original scripts said, Doctor Who and the Spearhead from Space, but they didn't know to take it out by the time they put it on the screen. So that's why this is literally the only one that has Doctor Who in the title.
That's very strange. I don't know if I'll put that in the title of the video or the thumbnail. I might just leave it at the Silurians, but that's very weird.
Yeah.
So,
but they were in a transition, different directors, different producers, and showrunners, what we would call today.
Yeah.
And that that title was on the original script, and that became the shooting script. And then again, when they passed it on to the people who do the titles, they simply forgot to take that out because it was supposed to just be called the Silurians.
Yeah. Well, that is very strange, definitely. Now, it's also interesting because this is sort of like the Ice Warriors, where I've seen the Silurians in modern Doctor Who. So I have a vague sense of what they're about. So I'll see how much of that is translated to classic Doctor Who. But I mean, anytime they've shown up, I've liked the Silurians, so... and this is also a 7-part episode, which means that we'll be watching the first 4 parts today, and the next 3 next week. So, you got anything else?
I got nothing.
Then we might as well get right into Doctor Who and the Silurians. Here we go. I'm also 50% sure I'm pronouncing Silurians correctly.
How else would you pronounce it? Just Silurians,
I guess.
Well, this is fantastic. What's that?
Nope. Just go right back up. That's hilarious. They've been down in this mine for 5 seconds.
Did I ever tell you that I've actually been spelunking?
Nope.
I wore a helmet like that, but instead of an electric lamp, it was an open flame carbide lamp. Yeah. Oh, sure. Go towards the rumbling, roaring, whatever it is.
He's a brave man.
Or an idiot.
Whoop.
It's a tiny T-Rex.
Was Brilligan the slithy toes, did Gar and Gimble in the way.
Hey, they got him car.
Hello, Liz.
You'll never get that thing running.
Well, don't you be so disrespectful. I'll have you know this is a car of great character.
Wait, they got him a broken car?
Are you really going to drive about in it?
Yes, certainly. I've nearly finished my modifications. Thought we might take her out for a trial run in a minute. Now, I wonder what that's for. Oh, well. I'll drive you up there in Bessie.
Bessie.
Yeah, Bessie.
I see.
Oh, that's a good sign. I wonder what people thought when John Pertwee just goes driving by.
The town where I live, Milden Hall, looked like that, except it didn't have 2 and 3 stories. They were mostly 1 story, some 2 stories.
That point is clear. Finally, the purely scientific angle. Now, the Doctor here... What is it, Doctor?
It's the most extraordinary thing. I can't seem to find a sonic screwdriver anywhere.
You're not proposing to dismantle a piece of equipment worth 15 million pounds with a screwdriver?
Well, it's not worth 15 million pins if it doesn't work, is it?
Doctor, I suggest you start by just looking round.
Yes.
Well, I mean,
Take you both over the installation. Splendid.
someone had to build the machine. Did they not use a screwdriver ever?
You ought to shut down the place at once.
That would be a decision for the director.
A decision he might be reluctant to make.
Dr. Lawrence has the research program very much at heart.
This is reminding me of Fury from the Deep.
I take it you're yet another member of the unit team.
Yes. Depressing, isn't it?
This is Dr. Meredith.
Besides, you have no authority.
Dr. Meredith, as an associate of unit, I think you will find that I have the authority to do precisely as I please. May I now see your patient?
It seems I have no choice. All right. But I warn you, it's at your own risk.
So the Doctor is a member of UNIT when it suits him.
It's absolutely incredible. He's thrown his mind back millions of years.
Other than the alien, the other things look like the cave paintings in Lascaux.
Oh, yeah.
I'm frightened. What's going to happen?
You mustn't panic, just behave normally.
This unit investigation, they're bound to discover something.
I know, it's a risk.
24 power normal. Good.
So the plot thickens.
Tell the Brigadier or Baker they'll help. Before someone else gets killed.
They wouldn't believe me, and anyway, there's far too much at stake. Now take a hand up.
You'd be surprised what the Brigadier will believe.
It's not worth the risk.
The knowledge I shall gain is worth any risk.
Alright, so it's not quite they're doing this under duress as I thought.
Thank you, Major Baker. We'll have another go at those files later.
Sir?
I shall be in my office.
He didn't close it.
Yeah. Looked like he was having some trouble there.
But he has to get off stage.
Yeah.
What exactly?
Could be sabotage, I suppose. Or someone trying to cover up simple incompetence.
Lethbridge Stewart, what on earth is the point of my trying to discover things for you if you keep turning them down all the time?
Then I suggest you discover something I can't dismiss.
You're not exactly a little Sherlock Holmes yourself, are you?
Almost unrecognizable without his clothes.
I was going to say, it took me a second. It'd be hilarious if he still has his cape on, though. We are definitely in the age of plastic suits. Which, I mean, I thought about it. We did have some ridiculous monsters with the first Doctor, and obviously the second Doctor had a good number, but is it because they're in color that they look faker now?
That could be.
That might be it.
I think there was several of the commenters have said that we're watching them on like this ultra high definition stuff today, where it was much different. And I'm wondering if it switched over when they switched to color to a higher resolution, which makes it seem sharper.
It could be that, and who knows if this was like remastered or something. Yeah. Well, plus I guess we don't know. I know that when a number of episodes were missing, they were all found, but pretty much most of the recovered episodes were black and white, and then they were colored. So I don't know what episodes are colored and which ones aren't, and that could probably add to it.
Yeah. But there is something to be learned from great directors like Alfred Hitchcock and even Steven Spielberg. You remember in the film Jaws, you never really see the shark until very, very late in the film. And here, rather than giving us a shot of the entire head, just show us the teeth or just show us that lizard eye, and that could give you the same effect without, going, hello, I'm a cheesy dinosaur.
Yeah, they borrowed this from the Godzilla set across the world.
It does look a little bit like the Gorn, also from Star Trek.
Which, I mean, it's the top of 1970, so we're not too far off from the Gorn episode of Star Trek anyway. But other than, that and the fact that, obviously this was the era of budget slashing for Doctor Who, it's still a good episode.
Yeah. Now, I may be wrong, but I'm also somewhat surprised by I don't want to say the complete lack, but very little incidental music.
Yeah.
There's sound effects and things like that, but there was only a couple of, dramatic pauses sort of thing, or beats in there. So again, if they're cutting back, it seems like they're cutting back literally on everything.
Yeah. So, I mean, it's interesting because this definitely feels like a Troughton episode, but instead of, well, the Doctor just happens to find this place because the TARDIS brings him here. I like that they have to specifically change that to the Brigadier just drags him somewhere and then he has to get involved. Because for a little bit, I was kind of thinking, like, okay, so what exactly, like, I feel like there's almost like two levels of involvement where something has to be crazy enough for Unit to be involved, and then it has to be even crazier for him to bring in the Doctor.
Yeah.
So I'm not quite sure if at the beginning it's like, oh, yeah, so, there's power failures and people with, having mental breakdowns and stuff like that. It's like, okay, I can kind of get Unit. Bringing in the Doctor does seem a bit strange. But, obviously, then it works out when he sees Spencer and his... I will say, when they cut to him and it's like, oh, his mind has been thrown back a million years. And it's like, has it? I was like, because when I looked at what he was drawing, he didn't immediately jump out, cave paintings and such.
Yeah.
It's like,
that's the first thing, obviously, other than the reptilian man. But there seemed to be a horse or a buffalo or something like that. Yeah, that's very similar to the cave paintings in Lascaux and Altamira in Spain. And there's one and I can never remember the name of it. There's a cave also in North Africa. Begins with a T, but I forgot it. But anyway, yeah, there are cave paintings all within like 200 or 300 mile radius in France and Spain and North Africa, which, that is very similar to all of those.
Yeah, so... and it was also interesting, immediately where it's like, oh, well, the people running this place, they're working for the bad guys and stuff. It did seem, though, at first, as like, oh, okay, they're not really... They're kind of being forced to do this. And then the one guy, it's like, oh, the knowledge I will gain. It's like, okay, I'm starting to not feel bad for you anymore. So you're kind of... You kind of had me. You had me in the first half, not going to lie. So...
if I can throw in just a world history note very quickly here. The cave paintings there in North Africa show animals that have not existed there in thousands of years, and it has helped scientists to realize that the Sahara Desert was not always as extensive as it is now. That at one point, especially along the northern coast and down into Central Africa, that there were giraffes and other kinds of what we would now call equatorial animals that had lived very close to the Mediterranean. So.
All right. It felt like a very long episode, but it was a standard length.
Yeah.
Alrighty.
A lot of exposition.
I guess that's true. It's interesting. I don't think Troughton ever changed out of his outfit. Or maybe like once or twice for like really quickly.
And I was thinking about that too, that Hartnell changed out during the French Revolution, but he didn't change like in Rome or in ancient Greece or anything, did he?
Not in Greece. He did in Rome. He had a toga.
Toga?
Yeah, in Rome. But that was about it.
So the beeping changed, or whatever that was, that whistling chased it off?
Maybe.
What we called it?
Well, it's like the Yeti all over again.
Well, it was certainly some kind of dinosaur. There's certainly nothing that I've ever seen before, though.
In museums, you mean?
No, I do not mean in museums. Well, on second thoughts, perhaps I do,
Look, sir. Suppose there is sabotage going on, and a large group...
the first episode was going back to the cavemen.
Your men will be armed, sir? Small arms, grenades, nothing very substantial. We'll be a bit short on firepower.
That's typical of the military mind, isn't it? Present them with a new problem and they start shooting at it.
Yes, well, I'll inform the director of my decision.
It's not the only way, just blasting away at things.
Well, don't worry, Doctor. We'll make sure your prehistoric friends gets a sporting chance. We won't shoot till we see the whites of its eyes, huh?
I mean, when low artillery is grenades, that's pretty serious.
Oh, so this must be the Silurian.
Oh, yeah.
Because he doesn't have the same head as the little reptile dinosaur. Makes you wonder if it would be worth going back and CGing some velociraptors or something like that in.
Well, Doctor?
Now, see, just a little bit of a hand is much better than showing the whole thing.
Nah. Oh, there's enough soft hay for a bed.
Well, no. Gone off to that cottage of his, has he? If he spent more time doing his job and less writing that book of his... When he gets back, tell him I'd like to see him, would you?
Maybe the director doesn't know what's going on.
It doesn't look like it.
We're all on...
I must know. You will be given the information when the wounded one is returned to us.
Very well.
Very much the
What shall I do? How
deal
can
that the
I find
Daleks were making with that Victorian scientist.
Yeah.
Going to get some hay. Feed the horses. Find a dinosaur. Oh no, it's not the dinosaur, it's the other Silurian, or who we assume to be the Silurian.
Well.
Oh, stick a pitchfork in him. Ooh, bloody hell.
Doris! Some sort of freak! I saw it move in the hay! Well, get on with it, woman!
You got a pitchfork, poke him.
The barn.
In the barn?
In the barn.
Still there?
Be sure.
It's a master of stealth.
See, that's much creepier than showing us the whole thing.
Oh, yeah. All right. That's part 2.
Well, it's a much better story now.
Yeah.
Again, there was a lot of exposition in episode 1. That's understandable.
Yeah. They are really... It's interesting that they did show the Loch Ness and the caves, whereas they're being much more secretive about the Silurians themselves. Yeah. I feel like we're really like pressing along. It's one of those where it's like, this is 7 parts? Like, really? Like, it feels like it's supposed to be 4 parts and we're about to, get through, but no. So, it's very interesting.
Yeah. You'll also notice a lot more of filmed in one location, then immediately cuts to a new location, whereas they weren't doing that with the other one. That was...
Yeah.
Remember, they had to film pretty much... not in sequence, perhaps, but all they're in the studio or wherever. And they said the editing was very difficult. Much more editing going on here.
Yeah, definitely. I
mean, much more location work too.
Yeah, well, and also just the fact that, just different from where we started off, where it's almost one camera practically. Maybe you can cut between some other cameras, but you're all filming the exact same thing at the same time and just go. Whereas this definitely feels like more fluid and going to different angles and everything. So yeah. It's also interesting they're talking about how UNIT conducts themselves, not only from the director, talking about, this is an inconvenience and all that stuff, but the Doctor as well, talking about the, sort of shoot first mentality that UNIT has, which is interesting. So I'm wondering, if we're going to get more of that over the course of, 3 years that we're going to be stuck here at UNIT. So.
Forest fire.
It was raining 5 minutes ago. It's probably fine.
If that's in the moors, now if that's the moors, it's in southwest England. That's where we're from, Devon.
The village is here.
Well?
This farm is miles out of his way.
Now see some incidental music right there, just to highlight. Dun dun dun. Makes me wonder if that's a Vauxhall too. Of course, the dogs would hear it. It's high pitched.
Yeah.
Totally not suspicious. Out here on the moor all by myself.
Just stepped out for a piss. No one bothered.
I just realized that the 3 parts of the eyeball there, very similar to the 3-part eye of War of the Worlds, the aliens from War of the Worlds.
Well,
I'm sure.
Look, Doctor, I'm sorry, but I really have to be
It's
going.
heated too, eh?
It gets very cold up here.
Yes. Still, you do keep it very warm, don't you?
Yes, well, the thermostat's jammed, you see.
A lot of houses did not have central heating. Trust me on that one.
Perhaps you'd like to let me look at it. Good.
I had to shovel coal and chop wood
It is rather
and
like the reptile
fill the
house
kerosene
in the zoo,
heaters.
isn't it?
What do you mean?
He's not going to leave anything important just lying around, is he? There we are.
it needs a sonic
Well,
screwdriver.
then, what have we got?
Where the landmass is all bunched together.
What's that? Let me have a look at that.
Pangea.
This is what I do when someone knocks on the door. Just try to wait them out.
Unless I get it back to the caves, it will die. And I won't take it back until it tells me what I want to know.
We should be counting how many times someone tries to outsmart an alien. I thought it was trapped. It was held hostage. It's in a half door. Oh, maybe that's the point. It was trapped. It's the creature from the Black Lagoon.
Very similar, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's part 3.
Well, moving along crisply.
Yeah. All right, so I didn't realize that Major Baker was not... I guess he's not part of UNIT. He's just specifically security?
Yeah.
All right. So, that's interesting. It's a very interesting dynamic of the doctor who doesn't always agree with the brigadier, who is now dealing with the director there, and they're all trying to get different results, and no one's working together very well.
Yeah.
So, I'm assuming also at the end Dr. Quinn is dead.
That's when he put his hand over his eyes. I'm assuming that was what it was too.
Yeah. Well, I will say, I mean, yes, there's the whole thing of, I'll make the aliens listen to me, and that obviously never works. But I will say he just wasn't that good at sneaking around anyway. Like, he kept saying, I'll go straight back to the lab. He never went back. And it was very obvious.
Yeah.
So, I also like the idea that because he has central heating, that's another thing that makes him suspicious. Not for any real reason other than it's like, oh, well, not many people have that, so what's going on here? That would have been
very expensive. Because in an old house like that, they would have had to find some way to put the ductwork into each room to keep it, warm in the wintertime, cool in the summertime. So in an old house like that, I mean, it's not like this. They didn't have false ceilings like we do and places for ductwork. So, that's... again, even in 1966, when we were living on Lake and Heath Air Force Base, there were some electric wall heaters in each room. We didn't have central heat and air then. But even those were not warm enough, and one of my chores after school was to fill up the kerosene, bring coal in, because we did use the fireplaces in the living room. We didn't have fireplaces upstairs, but we did in the living room. And sometimes chop wood. Now, more than I think about it, the chopping the wood was probably more for the house in Herringswell in 63, 64. But getting the coal, filling the kerosene, chopping the wood. Did all of those things.
Yeah.
You have life so much easier.
Nah.
You've never lived in a house that didn't have central heat and air.
Yeah. I live in the modern age. So...
I've told you before, the first house we lived in France back in 1956 didn't even have indoor plumbing. We had an outhouse.
Yeah.
Oh.
So...
Yeah, it's worse than you can ever imagine.
Yeah, so... but yeah, it's also interesting that now, in both this and the last episode, when it's like, oh, let's go see the civilians and how they're affected by this story. I swear we're meeting the exact same type of civilians, like on the countryside, cottage, put the thing around the head, and it's like, are we... Do you think we ever go to the city? I mean, I guess there were autons in the city last time around, but it seems like this is just sort of where we are and where we're going to be. So,
quite honestly, it was very easy to film out in the countryside, because then you don't have to worry about stopping traffic and setting up and doing the lights and the sound and everything like that, and keeping everybody at bay. So we may see a lot of that in the next couple of years.
Yeah, that would make sense. So,
and by the way, this is just, I was mentioning before that the Lemin family is from Devon. We go back to the 1600s. If we have any viewers who are in the town of Redruth, there is apparently a place called Lemin's Court in Redruth. Now, we're from Tavistock, so I'm not exactly sure why there's a street in Redruth that's named after us. But if there is anyone who lives in that area, please go take a picture and send it to Alex on Twitter or send it to me on Facebook, and I would love to see that.
If he could, he would go to England and find all these places himself.
I would.
But he can't.
When I lived in England, I was not aware of our heritage. My grandparents never talked about... I mean, I did not know that my grandfather was a first-generation American. That his father, my great-grandfather, left Tavistock and came to the United States in the 1880s and married an Irish woman who was also an immigrant named Margaret Folliard. So, and again, I've learned that maybe in the last 15 or 20 years. But nobody talked about that when I was growing up.
See, if we ever go to England, what's going to happen is there's going to be a split of fans. Some of the fans will go to you in your history lesson about the family. The others are going to go to me and complain about how I pronounce things. That's what's going to happen if we ever go there.
Yeah.
So,
well, that's the bucket list. You know, we've been saying that ever since you graduated from high school. At some point, the four of us, I want us to go to England. And again, I would love to go back to Lakenheath and Milden Hall and Herringswell and show you guys where I actually lived. But if we don't get anything else, we have to go to Plymouth and Tavistock, because there are still members of the Lemin family who live there and have been there for 300 years, 400 years almost now.
Yeah. So, but don't expect it soon. There's currently, well, I guess it's okay to say pandemic now. Earlier on in the days of the pandemic, if you mentioned it by name, I don't know how this worked, but there were people that were saying that YouTube would demonetize your video if you said, coronavirus or anything like that. Now, the thing is, we're demonetized anyway because we have copyrighted footage in our video, so it just happens anyway. But yeah. So back, when lockdown was just starting out, there were people, they had to say it in code in order to talk about it. And there was one channel that, instead of saying the coronavirus pandemic, they said the Backstreet Boys reunion tour.
I did not know that. That's...
Yeah.
Because it makes you wonder. I mean, obviously, everybody knew about it, so...
Yeah, it's one of those things, like, it's... Well, YouTube and demonetizing videos is a very strange thing to try to understand. But I would imagine it's because there were so many people dying of it and everything that it was sort of a... It was... I guess because maybe it was a hot button issue or something that... that even though, yes, the entire world was going through it, YouTube didn't want you to say it at all.
I'm very surprised.
Yeah, so instead, the poor Backstreet Boys had to be framed for it.
And I'll be honest with you, I think a Backstreet Boys reunion tour would probably be more painful than the coronavirus.
Well...
I remember the Backstreet Boys, and they were... I mean, sure, they're great singers, but the songs that they... just mind-numbing garbage. We had, I don't know if you know this, but back in the time of the rock and roll, because you grew up listening to rock and roll when you were in the car with me, but there was an era in the late 60s and early 70s called bubblegum pop. And seriously, it's brain melting. It's just awful stuff. There was a group called the Archies and the 1910 Fruit Gum Company and just a bunch of stuff, and it's just this awful dreck. It's just horrible stuff. When you've grown up on the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Who and the Dave Clark Five and all the rest of those wonderful British invasion groups, then to hear the Archies singing a song called Sugar, Sugar, it's just it's disturbing. So let's not go there any further.
Yeah.
All right, episode 4. Let's do it.
This is why these videos are so long. Is that we just keep going. Today I preemptively plugged in my phone.
I was going to say, I saw that and I went, why did you plug in the phones? Because our last two run over an hour.
Yeah, because these are ridiculously long, and I have fast charging. We're at an hour and a half already, and we still have one more episode, and then we have to talk. So, part 4.
For editing.
Yeah, jeez. Unless you're in full length, you crazy bastards.
So this isn't really alien technology, since they talked about the Silurian period. That means that these are people from Earth's distant past.
Yeah. Yeah, technically, I believe the Silurians were here first. They're natives.
Hello. Are you a Silurian? No, wait! 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 Unless you Silurians tell us what you want, the humans will destroy you!
Well, he talked to it.
By the way, that door would have been very thick, so poking through it like that would have taken a huge amount of strength.
Thank you.
Jeez!
The old karate chop to the back of the neck.
And you just let him walk away?
I thought he was ill, sir. He said he couldn't use his arm.
He seems to have used it on you, all right.
Yes, sir.
This looks like an episode they colored later. Doesn't it?
Dismissed.
Possibly.
Sir.
It is a bit fuzzy.
It's definitely different from the others.
Surely you're going to look for Major Baker.
He'll be in those caves, looking for those...
I will, and don't call me Shirley.
We'll find him when we move in.
Ah, yes, the old vaudevillian joke.
Never gets old.
Oh, there's an old Spelunkers joke about stalactites and stalagmites and how you can tell them apart. It says that tights go down and mites go up.
But this establishment should be closed down completely.
Not much chance of Dr. Lawrence agreeing to that.
And a planned, cautious, scientific investigation of those caves. Not an invasion by a lot of big-booted soldiers.
There are times, Doctor, when you sorely try my patience.
Oh, really? You must try mine. It's an old Groucho Marx line. It's rather odd that they didn't give the Silurians a way to speak with their mouth.
Well,
Lethbridge Stewart is asking for more troops. Yeah, to go chasing about on some sort of manhunt. Nothing's been done about the power failures.
Coffee in a clear plastic cup.
Under very heavy pressure from the minister. The brigadier and his team have come down here with... What, that girl and that crazy doctor? The doctor is supposed to be brilliant. In his own way, he may be a little eccentric. The man's a raving lunatic. He's insolent, he's impertinent. He shows no respect for my authority.
Ah, Dr. Lawrence.
well, he doesn't show respect for anyone's authority.
Is your species the only intelligent life form?
Only intelligent life form. Oh, I see what you mean. Yes, of course we are.
You were carrying a simple projectile weapon. Do all your species carry these weapons?
Of course not. Only soldiers.
What other
And
weapons do
Americans.
your soldiers carry?
I will not tell you anything.
The creature is becoming aggressive again.
Oh, their
I will
mouths are
force it
moving,
to
but
answer.
Uh,
I do not wish it to be damaged.
if they
This
had
creature
just
is less
kept the
intelligent.
lip here so that we could see the
We
chin
should
moving.
not have been killed.
Intentions? Well, that's obvious, isn't it? We must destroy them before they destroy us.
starting to notice a problem.
Better have a word.
That's the third eye.
I thought you were going to get help.
Very Buddhist.
Nobody helps on the way. I only wish it weren't. Have you seen the humans yet? Have you spoken to them?
I have destroyed them, and now I shall destroy you.
Well, that's a fine how do you do.
Considering it was only one of them, I imagine that's the... what was the guy in Marco Polo that didn't like the Doctor and everyone?
Tigana?
Yeah, I think he's the Tigana of the Silurians. There was always one. There was always one when we had those sorts of things. Like the second in command never liked the Doctor and everyone.
The same thing with the Dominators.
Yeah, it was sort of similar there. So, all right, that was all 4 parts, right? Yeah, okay. These episodes have not been longer, but they've sort of felt longer than...
Yeah, again, that's because I think they're able to edit and we're getting more information.
Yeah, it definitely feels like we're getting more per episode.
And I will say, in that last episode, the the little scene between the undersecretary and the director seemed to go on a bit long. That seemed a bit... I understand why they did it, but it seemed to be padded just slightly. But other than that, it's a good story.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. You've got a group of species, a life form that lived here on Earth, in prehistoric times. Somehow or other, they were driven underground. They went, into hibernation, whatever. And when they wake up, they find out that a mammal of all creatures has taken over the world. So
yeah, I guess probably if they were that advanced, they probably went into hibernation to avoid the extinction of the dinosaurs.
Yeah. Or the Ice Age.
Yeah, which I'm now... Ice Age, I guess, would also make sense because they like warmer temperatures. Although I'm now remembering that there is an in-canon explanation for the extinction of the dinosaurs later on with the Fifth Doctor. Oh, that's just funny. So, yeah.
Yeah, and that happened so quickly. And I realized that it lasted for quite a long time because of all the debris that was put up in the air by the impact. But that wouldn't have given them much time to go into hibernation unless they already had something like that planned out.
Yeah, so...
And the Ice Age would not have happened overnight. With the temperatures slowly getting colder and colder, and I don't know exactly how far back the Silurian period goes, but with temperatures getting colder, that would have given them plenty of time to go into hibernation. So
yeah, so...
It's plausible. From a historical and scientific standpoint, we're sitting here going, okay, yeah, we can understand this. And although they're not aliens, they are an alien species to us.
Yeah.
Because we've never seen them before.
Yeah. Which, and that's the thing, it's an alien species to us, but they are from Earth. So that's sort of the interesting thing. And, the whole thing of, it's their planet. Oh, it's our planet. It's like, we could share the planet. There's the meme of like, oh, this is your thing, this is our thing, and then you play the communist national anthem, and there you go.
It's what's mine is mine, and what's yours is mine.
Exactly. So, to jump into the notes, the first thing I wrote down was Bessie, the Doctor's car, which they got him that car very quickly, which is interesting. Which not like I was expecting a scene where the Brigadier and the Doctor go car shopping or anything, but they did find that really fast. And then I guess just the Doctor just had to fix it up, which is interesting. The Doctor has to fix it up, but he does it, and even though there was a joke, I wonder what this thing is, he just throws it to the side. It's like, but it does work, perfectly. He really did fix it up, despite the fact that he has never been able to fix the TARDIS and can't fix the TARDIS even now that it's more broken. So,
yes, but the internal combustion engine and the transmission of a car is infinitely easier to fix than the TARDIS.
Yeah, probably. So
even for a genius like the Doctor.
Yeah. So let's see. So we have this nuclear power plant, basically, to convert nuclear power into electricity, which was interesting.
That was very big in the 1960s. This was before we realized that, the spent fuel rods were still radioactive. Even though we couldn't use them anymore, they were radioactive enough to kill people. And then we began to realize, where are we going to put all this radioactive crap? There's films like The China Syndrome and some others, and a lot of novels that talk about how when we first began using atomic energy, it seemed like the promise of the future, but then we realized it had a really bad downside, which is, where do you store all that radioactive waste?
Yeah, so... which, it really doesn't seem like they're going to go into that in this one. It's just that it is a nuclear power plant, and it's just that it needs to be that because that's what the Silurians are taking so that they can revive their own, which is interesting. Let's see, we had the mental regression, which was interesting. Again, I'm not sure how or why they did that. Now that I'm thinking about it, I was like, wait, why did the Silurians throw his mind? It's a good hint at first of so that's where the Silurians are from and stuff. But why did that happen? Was that intentional, or did they?
Why did it happen to him and nobody else? everybody else that they encountered it didn't happen to.
Yeah. I mean, it's sort of hit and miss what the Silurians do to people, because sometimes they just die, sometimes their minds are thrown back millions of years, but then sometimes they just sort of attack, but just sort of just to incapacitate, and then sometimes they release the guard dog. Why do they have that? And that's the weirdest part, probably, is that, oh, they have this, he's like a watchdog, and it's like, okay, so you're not being hostile. Also, you don't seem to need him. You guys are plenty strong, so...
I'm hoping we'll see some of the answers in the final 3 episodes, but
yeah.
For right now, yeah, that is the one kind of glaring inconsistency.
Yeah, so...
And again, considering how effective the Silurian costumes are, it doesn't seem that it's necessary to have the little, fake dinosaur.
Yeah, because, I mean, you could have just had, at the end of the first episode, or just somewhere in that episode, it's just, they were just attacked by a Silurian, and they say it's in self-defense and everything.
Yeah.
So you just do that, and then you were already hiding the Silurians until about episode 3, when you finally showed one in full. So you could just do that. Why specifically the cheesy Godzilla suit? And it's like, oh yes, here's this thing. They just sort of have it. Let's move on. So, it is a bit strange just to have that, and it's just like, oh, it's just some sort of guard dog. It's like a very violent guard dog. So yeah, let's see.
And it seems to roughly be the size of one of those velociraptors from the Jurassic Park and Jurassic World things.
Yeah.
But they created it to look like the dinosaurs that were known at that time, which were, T-Rexes and things like that.
Yeah, so... Which, in sort of the distant shot, it looked not like it had the really stubby arms, but it had sort of smaller arms. But then when it attacks something, you get the 2 giant... what have to be just 2 giant arms on sticks that they just hit the actor with.
Yeah.
So it's a bit inconsistency there. It's one of those things. It's not really a knock on the episode or anything. It's just one of those like, well, why do you go with this? You already have the Silurians. Just stick with them.
Yeah.
So, and then we had the whole thing. Like I said, at first you start to think, oh, okay, so Dr. Quinn and Miss Dawson and everything, they're working with them under duress, it's, oh, work for us or we'll kill you and stuff. But then there's the whole thing of, well, Dr. Quinn wants the scientific knowledge. And they don't even say, like, what knowledge specifically, just knowledge in general.
Yeah.
Like, at least, you brought up Evil of the Daleks, where, at least with that guy, and, this guy in Victorian times, was trying to learn the secrets of alchemy from the Daleks. Like, okay, well, that's at least very specific. He's trying to turn, normal metals into gold and stuff like that. Okay, I get that. And obviously, the Daleks are just, yanking his chain on that one. But yeah, this time, it's like, well, they have advanced scientific knowledge. Yes, but he never says, like, well, they can help us, maybe with the radioactivity and stuff like that. Like, what do you do with all this stuff? Maybe they could help with making a more efficient nuclear power plant, or just finishing it, because they're not even done. They're doing experiments on nuclear power for electricity. So I guess that's one of those things where it's like, so what were you doing? What were you gaining out of this? Why did you think you could beat them? If they're that advanced, why do you think you can beat them? That's sort of the thing we always come back to with these guys.
But there is another thing, too. Again, watching this one episode at a time, I doubt we would have noticed that pattern.
Yeah, probably.
Because, we literally just watched a month's worth of Doctor Who. 4 episodes would have taken over 4 weeks.
Yeah.
And by the time you had gotten to episode 4, you would have forgotten most of what happened in episodes 1, 2, and 3. So, we understand that. But, as, viewers today, it's not a complaint. It's just it's a good story, but it does have some glaring problems.
Yeah. So, let's see. They also do mention the whole thing of the farmer Squire, who died of fear, which they didn't do anything else with that. It's like, which I guess I guess that ties into the mental breakdowns, but it doesn't seem like the Silurians are doing anything specific about that.
Yeah.
They're just attacking and people are losing their minds, which I guess makes sense, but I mean, like, last episode, when, like, no one was having a nervous breakdown about the Autons. I mean, they were getting shot by the Autons, but that was it. They were just getting shot. Like, it seems strange that they're emphasizing, like, dying of fear and stuff like that in this one, but they're not really doing anything. Like, the Silurians aren't doing that for any reason. So, yeah, that one's kind of weird. And then the whole thing of Dr. Quinn not being very sneaky. He just kind of goes around. There's helicopters and everyone is out there. They can see him, but he's just stopped on the side of the road to try to find his buddy, I guess. So, let's see. There was the whole thing with Major Baker, who wanted to get down there. I guess he's just more on the side of, they're just a hostile species and we need to take them out.
Yeah.
Though he was more willing to try to learn information for the Doctor once he was in the cage. But so that was kind of interesting. But then he starts asking questions and then he's not giving anything to them. He's not really doing this very well.
Now, as a former military man, which is what Lethbridge Stewart said he was, he would know that under interrogation, at some point, if they begin asking, troop strengths and movements and stuff like that, you fall back to, this is my name, this is my serial number, and I will tell you nothing else.
Yeah, so there is at least that, yeah. Let's see. Well, there is the whole underlying thing of military versus science, which is interesting. We didn't really get much of that in the last episode. But it's one of those things where it's like, okay, it's kind of strange to have that in this episode because it also makes me think, well, is this going to be resolved? Because we're here. We're at UNIT, and we're going to be here for a while, so I assume this has to get resolved, unless this is an ongoing thing of the Doctor and the Brigadier sort of clashing ideologies. Yeah. But it does at least make sense. Everything... That's sort of the thing, is everything the Brigadier does makes sense, just from his point of view with everything and his military mind and everything, whereas the Doctor is more looking at this as trying to be the peacekeeper and everything. And it is kind of interesting. They sort of do this sort of story again in modern Doctor Who, again with the Silurians actually. Not necessarily military, but with the Doctor trying to be a peacekeeper and the humans being like, oh, they're evil and stuff like that. And it's like, well, you don't know that. They're green. That doesn't mean they're evil. They're just green. So,
yeah, Lethbridge Stewart is, shoot first and ask questions later, and the Doctor seems to be ask questions first and shoot later if you have to.
Yeah. So, yeah, that is pretty true. That it's just that the Brigadier sees more of the military side of it. So, I did
kind of a threat assessment. You have to determine, are they a threat, and if so, can we defeat them? And then once you feel that you have that under control, that edge of superiority, of strength of or military might, whatever, then you can negotiate. So again, it's shoot first, ask questions later.
Yeah, pretty much. Let's see. I did like was it the beginning of this episode, or was it? Yeah, it was the beginning of this episode. These episodes, so much is in them that I forget what happens in which episodes. At the beginning of this episode, the Silurian goes towards the Doctor, and just immediately he's just, hello. And he just tries to talk to him, and it actually works, which is interesting. So, I did like that approach. That was good. And I will say that this sort of thing, over this in the last episode, I was trying to think, like, okay, I almost feel like they're not actually writing the Doctor any differently. Like, I was thinking, I was watching these scenes, and I was picturing what would the second Doctor do in these scenes. And honestly, it was sort of beat for beat, sort of the same sort of thing. And I was thinking, like, okay, so maybe it's taking them a little while to establish him as a different sort of Doctor. Though I will say, it almost feels like the key difference that we'll have between 2 and 3 is that 3 seems a bit more like put together. I feel like the second Doctor got flustered a lot, whereas the third Doctor, he's almost getting more frustrated than flustered about anything.
More of that I know more than you do kind of attitude, whereas the second Doctor seemed to be, well, I know a lot, but I don't know how it applies here.
Yeah, so...
Yeah, I was thinking that, although this is very well written, strangely enough, the Doctor is, again, not the center of the story.
Yeah.
He's somewhat incidental to all of the other dynamics that are going on there. And that may change in the last 3 episodes, but, again, whereas Hartnell became the center, and Troughton, for the most part, was the center. So far, he's not the center of attention here.
Yeah. Well, I think it might also be because of the Brigadier as well. Because, normally when you get, a Troughton base under siege sort of episode, and the Doctor goes in, he basically takes over. And then, yes, that does clash with whoever is actually in charge there. But this time around, the Doctor doesn't really do that, but the Brigadier does, because he goes in and takes control of the situation and is giving orders. He clashes with whoever's supposed to be in charge, and the Doctor is there too. And now the Doctor in this one is clashing with the Brigadier as well. So, yeah, I guess it's more of they've sort of divided up that where now instead of the Doctor, taking charge and taking command and everything like that, he's sitting back playing more of the scientist or even more of the detective role, whereas the Brigadier is the more commanding authority here. So, which makes sense for the Brigadier to have that.
I'm sure it's hopefully not intentional, but whereas Liz Shaw was a huge part of the first 4 episodes of the Spearhead, she's somewhat sidelined in this one. She's not doing as much. And again, I was kind of hoping from Spearhead that they were establishing her as, here's a contemporary scientist. Here's a person who can help the Doctor figure out what's going on specifically in the 20th century. But again, they're concentrating on the Brigadier and less on her. And again, that may just have been this particular script.
Yeah.
So, but I hope they don't sideline her.
Yeah, I could see it more as, whereas last time there was more with the Doctor and Liz, and yes, there was some stuff with the Brigadier, but the main thing for them was to, handle the Autons and stuff. Whereas this time, because of the specific threat, or maybe lack thereof, threat of the Silurians, it does need to focus more on the Doctor and the Brigadier, and less on Liz, and so maybe we'll just sort of get a back and forth on which character sort of takes more prominence in each story, which honestly that definitely feels like a different sort of companion dynamic than we're used to, where normally it's just here's the Doctor, here's his companions, whereas this time it's like, well, here's the Doctor and the Brigadier. Last time it was here's the Doctor and Liz, and they're working with the Brigadier against the Autons and stuff. So I mean, even though this does sort of feel like a Troughton script where it's like, oh, well, the Doctor shows up, has to deal with this weird thing, there's the person in charge who doesn't like him and stuff like that, it still feels distinct enough. Like, this is sort of a different vibe from what we're used to in these episodes. So, let's see. And speaking of people in charge, we had like 8 people in charge by the end of this. But we also had the undersecretary, which was interesting. I like how he already knew about the Doctor. He's just like, yes, well, he's eccentric, but he's supposed to be really, really good. It's like, so, which, I mean, it makes sense that pretty much immediately after the Autons, the Brigadier would have been like, yes, well, this person who has helped us, with the Cybermen and the Yetis, he is now here staying with UNIT for an indefinite period. We don't know how long. So he would send a report to the higher-ups. Yeah. So that was interesting. But yeah, the Undersecretary, he's interesting. He's trying to figure out everything that's happening here. And it's just sort of another dynamic to add in there in this now 4-person conflict.
You have the director, you had Dr. Quinn.
Yeah.
You had Baker.
Yeah.
And then you've got the Doctor and Lethbridge Stewart. And so, yeah, you're right. There's a huge number of authority figures who are all in conflict. And I'm not saying it dilutes the story, but it would help if... Now we got the Undersecretary. So, yeah, it would help if we could just, trim this down a little bit.
Yeah, which I mean they already are. Quinn's dead, and Baker is locked up as well. So, at the very least, I guess the whole thing with the Undersecretary, he is going more with the Brigadier than anyone else. Yeah. So, because that was the whole thing, he didn't just come in and be like, like Walter Peck in Ghostbusters, shut this down, shut this whole thing down. Like, he did come in and he's, listening to all sides, and he knows that crazy things can be happening. He's like, okay, so there's these Silurians, and then, the Brigadier makes his case, and he's like, okay, I'll go with what the Brigadier says. So, yeah, I guess there's that. And then at the end, they were destroyed. I'm going to say they weren't destroyed, the people that were sent down there. I think that Silurian... I think that Silurian there at the end is the Tegana, and he's lying to the Doctor. By the way, I'm slightly distracted. I think my phone is reflecting off your glasses, and every time I look over, and one of your eyes just turns blue.
Yes.
And it's slightly distracting me.
Now you have to understand. I noticed that earlier this week. I got new lenses on Monday, and I noticed, for example, when I look up in a room that has a mirror in it, I look at the light. When the light hits my lenses, they are blue. So there's a coating on my lens of some kind that I didn't have on my previous lenses. So I don't know if that's showing up on the screen or not. But yes, it's distracting. You have to get used to it.
Yeah. So, and yeah, that does make sense that it's a part of your new lenses, because I kept looking over here, and then I was like, wait, what's blue over here? And it's like, well, the only bright thing is the camera itself, because we still have the white wall, and we're both white and pale and stuff. So I just look over, and it's just only one of your eyes is blue.
That's just because of whatever angle I'm at here.
Yeah,
you have one of your lights out up above. So
yeah. So
anyway.
So yeah, you got anything else about this episode?
No. Again, just I'm hoping that Liz becomes again. I'm looking for another Barbara.
Yeah,
I want somebody who's going to be taking charge. And again, Lethbridge Stewart is kind of in the mold of Ian Chesterton, but we haven't really seen a good Barbara since Barbara.
Yeah,
and I really think that's one of the reasons why it worked in the first place, is because you had the Doctor, who was eccentric, but then you had Ian and Barbara, who went along very quickly, understood what was happening, and were able to then work through the stories.
Something that is nice is not having a Susan. Yeah. And I did like Susan, but we've had a lot of Susans.
Had a lot of young girls.
Yeah. Well, and because not even young girls, because I'd also throw Jamie into that category a little bit. Just people that are there and aren't necessarily the most helpful. And I know we don't bring in companions based on how helpful they are, but even in this episode where, Liz, her role is a bit reduced in this one compared to last episode, and that makes sense, for the story itself of all these, I guess the Council of Talking Men again, all these men trying to argue with each other and stuff. Like, okay, so she's sort of taking a back seat in this one, and that's fine. But at the very least, she is helpful. She is doing things to help the Doctor and everything. Whereas, yes, you can kind of get that like with Zoe, but Jamie. I mean, yeah, if you need a fight, you go to Jamie, but that's about it, Otherwise, he's just there to give his opinion. Yeah. So, nothing against Jamie.
We love Jamie.
We love Jamie, but still, it's just a thought. It's just a nice, with this one, it's like, all right, we have Liz and the Brigadier as companions. Those are pretty solid companions right there. So,
although still missing Carstairs and Lady Jennifer.
Yeah. Yeah, we did have them in the War Games for a while.
Just briefly. And again, although she was an upper-class lady, she was out there on the battlefield. She was doing her job, transporting wounded people. And Carstairs was a young man who was a soldier, but who immediately understood what the Doctor was about and what he was doing, and said, all right, I'll help you however I can. So it seemed to me that it would have made a good transition to bring them along.
Yeah, so... but then that wouldn't work out with people's theories about other stories with the second Doctor and fitting in another Doctor and stuff, so they had to just do a clean slate with this one. So yeah. Anything else?
No.
All right. I think this is 10 minutes shorter than the last discussion we did. So
lots of editing.
Yep. Lots of work. Gonna be tricky getting this one down. But I'll find a way. As Jeff Goldblum would say, I'll find a way. And with all that being said, we're Alex and Dad from 7th Hour Films, and we will see you guys next time. Take care. Alright guys, thanks for watching this video. There's a bunch of links on screen if you want to go click around to any of those. There's a playlist for all of our Doctor Who classic reactions, as well as a modern Doctor Who playlist for all my reactions to that. There's also a subscribe button and a Patreon button on screen, as well as other links in the description if you want to go check out any of those. See you guys later.